The Nikon 105 1.4e lens has been my go-to portrait lens for the last year and a half or so. I love my 85 1.4G so much, and my 200 f2. I needed something in between for a different look, a different perspective on certain portraits. Here are some of the images that I've made with it over the last year and a half or so. Subscribe to my channel. This is going to be, a review video, but everything coming from here on out is going to be editing tutorials with my action set that I'll have up for you guys in a matter of 2 weeks or so we can start editing some images together. So here's a quick little review of the two lenses, the Sigma Art 105 1.4 and the Nikon. I hope you enjoy. So the Sigma Art series 105 is built like a tank. It's not really that much taller, maybe a quarter of an inch taller than the 105 from Nikon with the hood on, but it is a lot heavier. It felt, I don't know, out of proportion on the front of my D850. I don't shoot with a grip, but you kind of need to grab it by the foot, and it's hard to get your fingers in between the hood and the foot of that, versus the 200 f2 all the way to the right. I just put that up for size comparison purposes. You can really grab that with your whole hand, and it reminded me a little bit of the time when I bent my mount on my D810 because I was just lugging the 200 f2 around on it before I got the extended foot that I have there, the aftermarket foot, and it's not really built for that. So when you take the hoods off of both lenses, the Sigma is about 1.25 inches, I'd say, taller, longer off the end of your camera than the Nikon is. It's girthier. It's definitely harder to handle just because you have the foot, then you have to maneuver the foot out of the way. You can't really get a grip on the barrel without your fingers sliding underneath of the foot. It just wasn't as enjoyable to use from an ergonomic standpoint. The front element on the Sigma is a lot bigger than the 105 Nikon, and I'm just not really sure why they felt the need to overbuild this lens. They said it was to let in a little bit more light and control the vignetting, but as you'll see in some of the photos, the vignetting is pretty much identical, I'd say, on both lenses. So let's get into it. So for these comparisons, the Sigma Art is always going to be 2 stars, and the Nikon is always going to be the 1-star image. Now, shooting these, I found that I think the Art is just a hair sharper, but I'm not a super fan of the way the Arts render skin always. I know it's nitpicking, but for the way I like to shoot, it can be kind of characterless to have everything be so sharp that you can just see every individual pore. The Nikon, I think, is a little bit smoother on the skin. The clarity, wide open on both. I don't think you're going to find fault either way. The eyes are, super sharp and in focus. This is just a natural light handheld shot on the D850. I think between these two eyes, if this was a little bit, zoomed in further, they would be almost identical. But just throughout the course of the shoot, I think the Nikon was a touch sharper. The transition areas is what really I could really see a difference in. The hair on where the fall off starts on the Sigma, I think it's just a little more busy and harsh compared to the more flattering natural fall off of the Nikon, in my opinion. Is it that big of a deal for you? I don't know. I'm going to attach the raw images so you guys can really play with it and see what you think. The bokeh in the background on certain scenes, you'd be hard pressed to really tell the difference. I know this shot is a bit closer, but they're Again, the Sigma I think is smoother, and I'll show you a shot I took on purpose on the train. Here we go, find that. Okay, so I took these images, just set the lens down, didn't move my feet at all, and I wanted to show you the difference in the background. So for this, the Sigma is on the right here with 2 stars. Nikon, same thing, 1 star. If we zoom in, I think the Sigma is definitely a sharper lens. I don't think I nailed focus exactly with the Nikon, but I mean, we're in at 100%. Nobody's going to be looking at these photos at 100% zoomed in like this. But that just lets you know how sharp and precise the art is. And I find it to be a bit clinical on the art series lenses. And I love my 35 art, as I've said. And I find that the busyness of the background it really suits the focal length of the 35 for me and what I like better. As we get farther into the telephoto lenses in the art range, I think that for portraits sometimes they get clinical. I don't really like that much detail in the skin, because I'd rather have a real nice fall off. Now, as you can see the train here in the background, she's just hanging on the ladder of a train at the train yard. It's pretty smooth here on the 105 Nikon. As you go over to the art, same shot, same perspective. It's, pretty jagged. Now, I mean, it's kind of splitting hairs, but I mean, this is just the difference between the lenses. You may not care. I don't think either one will ruin the shot, but there is a definite difference in between the two. The Sigma, I think, is, just looking at all the images I've taken, a more contrasty lens. I don't think it lets in quite as much light as the Nikon does. They made the front element bigger to control vignetting and possibly let in more light. I'm not sure why they felt they need to do all that, but I didn't add any distortion correction or fix any vignetting in Lightroom. These are just straight out of the camera, shot at 5300 Kelvin, so there's no auto white balancing going on. This is just exactly what they are. 1.4 wide open, and there's possibly, I mean, this is just a slightly darker exposure, so I wouldn't say there's more vignetting here. I would say it's very, very similar. Both lenses vignette quite a bit. The 105 vignettes quite a bit wide open. I like it. I wouldn't be bothered by either one in the vignette department, but just the fall off in the background here in the transition wise, the art is just showing what an art lens does. It's extra sharp, and you can tell in the background. But let's move on to some other images. So I shot these pretty close in at f2 on the D850 and Kelvin 5300, so there's no white balance difference between either photo here. The Sigma on the left, Nikon on the right, both incredibly sharp. Again, I think the skin can be a bit clinical on the arts. You wouldn't really notice unless you shot both. It's not really that big of a difference, but for just editing purposes, and just the more organic image, I think, comes out of the Nikon. As you can see here on the fall off, it's just really, it's not going that far. It's really organic on the Nikon, from in focus to out of focus. I think it's a bit more, it's just busier on the Sigma, and the skin is, it's a touch, it almost looked like you've sharpened the image already, in post. If you can see the hair here, it's slightly more nervous in the transition area than this, in my estimation. The background, these are just rocks on the ground. Slightly busier, you know, but that's what an art lens is. That's kind of their thing. Some people love it, some people don't. Doesn't bother me a whole bunch, but if I had to choose one, I'd definitely go with the Nikon, just for the way I shoot. Let's run through a few more images here. So Sigma on the right, Nikon on the left, and I think that the chromatic aberration is better controlled on the Sigma, for sure. Not that I really ever worry about that type of thing, but people have asked me to kind of gauge which one is better in that regard, and I think the Sigma wins. For me, the trade-off still wouldn't be great enough to declare it a better lens. Super sharp, skin looks over sharpened again versus the Nikon. A little bit more of an organic image here on the left, softer background ever so slightly, a little less contrasty on the 105 Nikon, but again, very nice lens. If you wouldn't have told me which one is which, and I didn't get to zoom in and look at the skin like that, I might not be able to tell you. So let's check out some more. So I just shot a real quick test here right before we got in the car and headed out. It was getting darker. I used the strobe, and I wanted to try to get some specular highlights and some bokeh balls in the background, but there was nothing that was going to be uniform in our area, like a stoplight or anything like that. So these are just cars, you know, coming down the alley as we were shooting. They were all turning at the same location, so they're the same distance away. But you'll be able to zoom in on the RAWs and tell me what you think as far as, you know, what you prefer. The art, as we've established, is a little bit sharper, a little bit, you know, more jagged. Neither one of them produce, you know, completely round bokeh balls wide open, which is, you know, understandable. And I'm not even sure if this is completely accurate, considering these are two totally different cars, different headlights, different, you know, strengths of light coming out in a different color, so we can't really gauge the circularity of the bokeh there based on anything that's uniform. So let's wrap this up. So for the last test, we're going to do the autofocus accuracy. So on my D850, I just had my friend walk towards me, and I used, like I always use, face detect and 3D tracking mode through the viewfinder, of course. And I was, you know, surprised that the art didn't nail very many images. This is all the Nikon right here, so we'll just go through the sequence and I'll let them resolve, and you can see it's just pretty much, I think, every image except for one in the series of, I don't know, probably 15 or 20 images it nailed. That one's soft. Okay, so we missed one there. This one is slightly out. That one's probably passable where our eyes are closed. I can't tell. That one's usable. That one's sharp. That one is sharp. That one's sharp. And this is at 100%. That one's sharp. That one's sharp. That one, I can't tell where eyes are closed. This one's sharp. This one's sharp. This one's sharp. This is at 7 frames per second. That's sharp. That's sharp. That's sharp. Sharp. sharp, sharp. You get the point. The 105 Nikon, it just nailed it. Okay, so the D850 and the Sigma Art, and I did calibrate this before I took it out, so it wasn't a user error. And I found this to be true with all my art lenses. I'll never use them in any scenario where I have to track a moving subject. I'm not sure how it would be on Sony mirrorless. It might be better, but as for it just can't keep up with the Nikon. So started out of focus, out of focus, out of focus, out of focus, and at some point, there we go, it went in. Now we're sharp. Now we're dull. That's soft. That's soft. The back eye is, yeah, still soft. 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 I mean, you get the point. It wasn't nailing them at all, and then I hit a spurt where there we go, we're sharp again. As she got closer, now we're out of focus again. Out of focus. Sharp. And this is where we're at with this image right here. We're about that far away. And it nailed that one. Out of focus. Out of focus. Sharp. Sharp. Yeah, this eye's in focus. So I wanted to do it again just to make sure that it was gonna actually catch up. This time we started out in focus, and I had better results this time, but it wasn't perfect. Sharp. Kinda sharp. 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 Soft. Soft. Back focused. Soft. Sharp. Soft. Out of focus. I mean, you get my point. It started to come back in focus at some point here, but I would never use this under any circumstances where I had to track somebody, just because, you know, if somebody's paying you to perform, you can't let your lens screw up your whole shoot. So that's just an issue I've had with the Sigma Arts. I wanted to let you guys know about that. So in the description below, you'll be able to download the raw files and check out for yourself. Play with them in Lightroom if you want. I would be happy with either lens, but having the 105 from Nikon now, I can't change it out. It renders beautifully and lets me edit the way I want to. Sorry for the long video, but a few people asked me to do it, so I wanted to give you an in-depth look at it. Subscribe, and in the next couple weeks I'll have up my editing actions, and I can walk you guys through some edits. That's what we're going to do from here on out. We'll do behind the scenes shoots, real life shoots, and then we'll edit together using my action set. So, all right, thank you guys.